ones that need to hear me, I hope you can hear me. I'm going to have the opportunity today to speak about our new breed, the Thrianta. All of you know how to pronounce that now, I hope. It's Thrianta, and you are getting better at it. I still hear this Thrianta and Thrianta and all this other stuff once in a while, but it is a Thrianta. And if you're going to judge them, I think you probably ought to learn how to pronounce the name. I'm going to give you a 15-minute analysis of this, and then we're going to have a round table describing or talking about color. First of all, let me talk a little bit about what kind of body they're to have. You can read the standard, and that's fine, but maybe I can give you some tips. Posing of any breed is important to show the correct body type. Would you all agree to that? The correct pose shows the rabbit. I can make this rabbit look pretty good, and I can make him look real bad, all in the way you pose him. So that's always been a pet peeve of mine. I think judges of different breeds, you've got to pose them correctly to get the most out of the rabbit's qualities that are there. This is a compact rabbit, very simple, 4 to 6 pounds, rather short in body, much like a lot of other breeds. We want a gradual top line. The body is worth 25 points. That's a fourth of the rabbit. Just the body I'm talking about, not general type body. You want a gradual rise from the shoulder up over the hip and a nice full animal. I like to use the word plump. That's the only standard in the only word in the standard of this breed that uses the word plump and firm. Plump kind of means it's a nice round, full looking animal. It's not real deep like a Florida white. It's not real wide like a big flat rabbit. It's just a nice compact with a nice gradual rise. You don't want a flat rabbit. You don't want a real deep rabbit. But a nice full plump rabbit with a slight taper from the hip to the shoulder, very slight. That's very uncomplicated. I mean, I don't know how I could explain it any other way. It's pretty simple. The thing we put in the standard in the new one is a little different than in the old standard, and we get a lot of questions about this. Well, the head mount. Where's the head supposed to be? And we put a statement in the standard, if you want to read it. It's to be in a natural position. If you have standards in front of you, go to, it sounds like I'm preaching here, go to the color picture. I think it's page 56, I'm sorry, 56. If you have a standard. If you don't, write it down, look at it at home. I think that's a very good picture of how we'd like to have our Thriantas posed. The natural head mount. This guy tends to kind of hug the table a little bit. He's got a low head mount. That's not wrong. It's not wrong. If he were to hold it up a little higher, and we might have some pictures here. Where's my gal to change that? PowerPoint, whatever. Yeah, you want to do that? I think there's some pictures of some rabbits there, are there not? Well, when we get to it, you'll see different head mounts, but you'll get my point here. We don't want any extension in the front legs. We don't want, there you go. We don't want them real high. You can see here's the first one, but his head set a little higher. That's not wrong. What we don't want, folks, if I can say anything to you today to take home, do not cover the head when you're judging the animal, like you do Florida whites and Dutch and other animals. When you're posing the rabbit, we want you to get away from pushing the head down to examine the animal. Try to, once the animal's posed, leave it might set itself. Because the head is a beautiful part of this breed. It's to be a full head with a nice round cheek and a rather full head with a nice stocky ear. You can see this rabbit, and we will have this rabbit over the other end. We have some with narrow heads and thin ears, and those are all faults. But we like a nice stocky ear with a nice full head. Where it carries it is natural. We don't care where it is, except you don't want any leg extension like Hollands. We don't want them up on their front legs real high. The picture again on page 56 there is a very good picture. That doe in there is holding her head very nicely up where she's really showing it off well, and yet she shows a nice full body and a good round plump body. So I think that's an excellent picture. So body type, body itself is 25 points. I think I've covered that pretty basically. It's not really complicated. The head and ears added to that body is 40 points for general type. We have 30 points on color. That's what this breed is in my mind. There's no other breed in the standard that carries that many points on color. None. Think about it. 30 points on one issue, color. So we're going to have a round table over here in great depth about the variations in color. And right now our variations in color. Very difficult to get them all to look exactly alike. we're going to try to tell you what we're kind of looking for, what we'd like to see, and then when you're judging, keep that in your mind. First of all, there's 30 points, and I break it down into 3 categories. One is depth of color, the depth from the surface down to the skin. How deep does that red run? A lot of them have nice surface color, but when you stroke or blow into that fur, boy, it gets real creamy down pretty quick underneath. There's not much undercolor. That's a fault. Number 2, evenness of color over the body, evenness of color. What that means is you see a lot of rabbits are nice and uniform and even up here. Then when you get down around the sides, it kind of lightens out or maybe gets blotchy, and it has a lot to do with condition, of course. A rabbit that's in real prime condition will have uniform color. Issue number 2 is you as judges, always when you're evaluating color, look at the belly, because it says evenness over the entire body. I've seen judges lots of times that, boy, they give you a whole dissertation on color and they never have rolled the rabbit over. They don't even look at the body. The belly, because it's a part of the body. When you look at that belly color, and we'll show you in the demonstration over here if you join our table, the belly color can be a little lighter, but as uniform to the top color as possible. So you're looking at 30 points, you're looking at the full color of the whole animal, the belly, the back, over the head and ears. You want a uniform red color. You can fault a lot of them today for lack of those 2 things. Depth of color and evenness of color. So when you're judging them, I saw a judge do a whole show one time, about 40 or 5 or 50, and he never looked at one belly. You've got to look at the belly, folks, if you're going to evaluate them properly. The 3rd issue in color is brightness. I like to refer to it as shine, but it calls for brightness in the standard. And really what that is not a luster. It's not like a Havana. It doesn't have luster, and it's not a sheen. It's just a nice bright coat. This animal, in my mind, is just a little bit patchy in brightness, or not quite as. We've got another one, and we'll show you over there, that the whole coat, when you look at it, it just kind of shines a little bit. It's got a little bit of spark to it. That's the hardest of the 3 things to get, in my mind, in my experience with this breed. It's because of condition, primarily. If they go out of condition, their color gets dull, as you well know in other colors of rabbits. But if you get one prime, it's got nice deep color and uniform color, and it's got that brightness. That's 30 points there. That's really good. Okay? Fur. Fur is 20 points. Fur is 20 points. So when you take body type or genotype, that's 40, and another 30 for color and 20 for fur, you've got pretty much the whole animal right there in 3 little old categories. They're not complicated. They're not like English spots or checker giants where you got 6 points here and 5 points there. This is a pretty basic animal, not hard to judge, so you shouldn't be overwhelmed by them because they're not difficult. Fur is a rollback coat. For fur a little over 1 inch long, and all of you should know what rollback means. It just it goes back slowly. You know, I asked a guy one time, I said, what kind of fur should a Thrianta have? Should it have rollback or flyback coat? And he said, it depends on the judge. Wrong answer. Rollback coat. And to be honest with you folks, we have a new breed. It's only been in existence 5 years. We need a lot of work on our fur. We have a longer coat. If it starts to die, gets a little dead in coat, then it gets harsh and texture, heavy and guard hair. If you get too short a coat, just like any other breed, it becomes a flyback coat and gets thin. But we want a soft, dense, rollback coat. Very simple. Condition is 10 points, but condition, as you well know, affects a lot of other things. If you got a poorly conditioned animal, it'll affect the color and it'll affect the fur. Sometimes even poor flesh will affect the shape of the body. So it's only 10 points, but it's relative to all these other things. So you've got to kind of take condition in consideration. I think sometimes judges, when they don't know the breed, tend to pontificate on things that aren't really relevant. One judge just beat the heck out of the rabbits because they had light foot pads. Where's all those points on the foot pads in here? I want to know. I mean, you know, he was just nailing them on. These will have creamier. The foot pads and the underside of the tail will be a little lighter. That's just the genetics. We can't change that. You see them? That's a typical thing. That's not to be faulted. If it's white, hey, anything white on this rabbit's a DQ. White spot, white toenail, white foot pads. I've yet to see one with white foot pads, but I guess it's possible. If you cross into something else, I guarantee there'll be some white there somewhere. But pure Thrianta wouldn't have that. The other thing I've seen a couple of times, you disqualify for slate undercolor, which I've yet to see on any of them. Somewhere along the line, I got that because that was what was in the Holland standard. They must have had it over there at some point years and years ago. But the ones I've seen, I haven't seen any slate on them. This guy, we'll show him over there again. One judge a few years ago was holding them. Well, actually, he DQ'd a couple. He said the ear lacing was slate colored. And he was wrong because I knew the rabbit very well. And this rabbit actually has a little more intensity of the red color on the ears, what it is. It's not slate colored. It's more intensity of the red color. So be sure that you know what slate is before you start DQing them for slate. And I can tell you it's very uncommon. I've yet to see one. I've seen some maybe with a couple of black hairs here and there, but that's about it. Another thing I'd like to comment on before we move on is that when you judge this breed, two things I'd ask of you. One is to be proactive, which means instead of tearing them up, I'd be the first to admit to you, we've had them here in this country for 5 years. They've come a long, long way, believe me. They have a long way to go to be really a lot of consistency. You're not going to see 15 rabbits over there in each class that are just terrific. We're not there yet. You're going to see better ones than we had 2, 3, 4 years ago in each class. We have a lot more of them over there in the show. But try to be proactive. See the good points and try to educate as you're judging them, rather than just tearing them down, saying pour this or pour that. Try to say you need to do this or need to improve that to help people, because they want to learn. Everybody's learning about this breed. And I don't think there's anything worse than a judge getting up there and just tearing the rabbit apart. So try to be proactive. The second thing Scott Williamson taught me a long time ago, tell what you see specifically. Don't use generic terms. Very nice or fairly nice, good, doesn't tell you anything. Try to be a little more specific about what color you want, what kind of head and ear you want, what kind of body do you want. Does it have a good body? Speak a little more specific to the rabbit in front of you. Educate yourself a little bit about the breed. It'll really impress the exhibitors, because they're starved for education on this breed. We're all still learning about the breed. So you as a judge are our leaders and the people who they look to train them all across the country. So try to be proactive in that respect. Let's see, what else do I have here? Any questions before we move on? Yes?
Is this rabbit really a self, or is it a wide band?
It's not a self. It's not necessarily a wide band. The research we've had done, which I don't know what that has anything to do with judging them, but it comes from a tan. It's got a tan pattern in the background. That's where you're getting some of this lighter color here and there. But they mixed a couple of breeds way back in Holland. But it's not a self. If it were a self, it wouldn't have eye bands and light foot pads.
That's what I'm getting. People told me they're selves.
No, they're definitely not selves. And they're not necessarily wide band, but they have tan pattern in them way back when. I was told years ago that they used the tan, took the tan coloring and got it into some other kind of an orange rabbit. And of course in Holland, they want them orange. And that's different than what we want them here. We made that change when I brought them in here. We want them red, because that's what catches your eye. And I'll talk to you more when you come to these groups about light ones as opposed to dark ones. But as I said in color again, the three things to keep in mind is depth of color, evenness of color, and brightness of color. And so you got to weigh all three of those factors when you grade one on color, because you'll get a lot of shows where there may not be a real dark one there. But it does have evenness of color, and it has a lot of shine. So you got to evaluate one or the other. To me, all three are equal in importance. So you just have to kind of keep that in your minds when you're judging. Any other questions? Okay, I think then we'll break for...
Yeah, probably the best if they can stop over.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I told him to remind me of that because I'm forgetful. You know, when I was a young guy learning how to judge, and I'm not preaching to the choir here, but the convention is the best place in the world to learn. And you're never too old to learn. I love to go down through the breeds now and look at them and talk to the people. We've got 180 over here, I invite you to go over there and talk to some of the breeders over there and look the rabbits over. We're going to show you 4 here to try to give you an idea, but you can look at the cages and look at the differences in the color, look at the differences in the body style. You can learn an awful lot. So I encourage you, judges, to take a few minutes and go down through the Thriantas and look at them while they're here. You're never going to get a better place to look at that breed and to learn about them and get in your mind's eye what you want, what we want, and how we're going to improve this breed. And look at the ones that are good and the ones that aren't so good. So, because there's some of each over there, believe me. Some of them are mine, I hate to say it. Not the bad, no, not the good ones.